Well, welcome back, everyone. You know, Father David Ross read an article in the Wall Street Journal called "American Politics Takes a Violent Turn." So to talk about that, Father.
Oh, my heavens. You know, it was so illustrative for me to read this article because I think I'm representative of a lot of other people who are just tired of the violence that we're finding within the political domain. I look back to 1835, January 30th of 1835. Do you know who the president was at the time?
1835, who?
Well, I wasn't around then, but Andrew Jackson. There was an assassination attempt on him, but fortunately, both of the pistols that were aimed at him misfired. So this is nothing new. The attack on political figures, and of course we know the great events in history like the assassination of Lincoln and McKinley and Reagan, you know, but those other four were successful. But it's now moving down to other levels. So for example, last Thursday there was a fellow from Alaska who was arrested because he sent 436 missives to the website of this United States Supreme Court threatening the 6 conservative justices who had opined on a particular matter. I think it was on Mr. Trump. But, you know, and then we see, of course, the assassination attempts on former President Trump, and it's just becoming, so routinely. As a matter of fact, Robert Pape, who is a social scientist at NYU, New York University, said, we as a nation have become so accustomed now to hearing about the violence against political figures that we don't give it a second thought anymore. Now, some people, for example, on the Republican side, according to the article, will say, we're tracing this violence, this present violence, back, for example, to the killing of George Floyd. The Democrats will say, no, it was the attack on the Capitol. But, you know, we even argue back and forth on all of this, trying to ascertain what the foundation of it is. And it's beginning, from my perspective, to do damage to the entire social fabric. And I'm thinking to myself, what's really speeding all this up? Well, from my perspective, it's the social media. It's the social media.
That's what I was going to say.
Well, I mean, you can't prove one thing or the other. And if you write something on the social media, of course it's correct, right? In the estimation of a lot of people who can be beguiled, you know, by any of the stuff that's put out there. And what recourse do we have once you find it in that domain? So I'm asking myself, what's our response? Well, I know I'm an old-fashioned person. You know, at 75.
I don't believe you.
Well, I do. Yeah, but I don't have time to get on Facebook or Instagram or X or any of those things. And so I prefer to stay off of those things. But I mean, I'll watch the news. But isn't it interesting? There was a book written years ago by Jonathan Haidt who talked about, he's a professor and I think he's also in New York. And he entitled the book, I forget what the title was now, but the whole idea of the book was that we have what is known as confirmation bias. We will watch a TV station because that station will broadcast or report what we want to hear, whether or not it's conservative or liberal. So you'll find some people who would never turn on CNN, and then you'll find some people who would never turn on Fox. And what happens is we try to be very, very selective as to what we want to watch because we're afraid of any contrary opinions. And when we hear a contrary opinion, oftentimes it creates some violent reaction within us that in some case, on the fringes of the society, those fringe people will then say, well, it must be true, and I've got to alleviate the circumstance. Now, some of those people on the fringes just want the acclamation. They want the name recognition. And so those people will go out and try the assassination attempts.
Yeah.
But it's really hurting the fabric of the culture, from my perspective.
Right. Well, and also in social media, now they have the algorithms. So if you click on something, you're going to get more of that. So you're going to get your mind fed more and more of the same thing. So
that's right. So, for example, if I go to look for a pair of shoes, I will get, I don't know how many advertisements in the next week or two on these pairs of shoes. I'm thinking, how do they know all this stuff?
Yeah.
Well, you know, that's why I say I'm old-fashioned. I don't know squat about that stuff. So in any case, you know. So we just have to live with it. But from my perspective, we have to be judicial in what we accept when we read it on social media. Of course, I'm not sure if that's applicable to WLIO.
We're on social media, Father.
No, I mean, to be critical of what's reported. So I think we have to take a lot of that stuff with a grain of salt. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, but also I have to think that maybe because of social media or whatever, it's not a real person. You're not talking to a real person, so you're communicating with a computer, and that's about it. So
Yes.
you don't get the real person-to-person aspect.
Well, God help us when AI really takes over, huh?
No, I know it's gonna be scary. All right, well, Father, very interesting. I love it when you come on.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
All
It was
right.
fun.
Well, don't go away because Noon Edition continues in just a moment.